accompanying.com. Okay, last time we continued with Division E, entitled Motion on the Physical and Astral Planes, where we learned that in our solar system, evolution proceeds by means of the second and third rays, which DK here calls the divine ray of wisdom and the primordial ray of intelligent matter, which are guided and utilized by the will aspect, contact with which is only available to those who have built the antakarana, direct contact, that is, of course. This guiding source is the animating principle behind the 7 hierarchies. As you know, the hierarchies are numbered according to rays. You can see here in this column, but they are embodiments of these ray energies. We then took a look at an HPB footnote, which describes Oya-Ohu, the son of the sun, who contains in himself the 7 creative hosts, source of the 7 rays. This from stanza 3, verse 7 of the stanzas of Zan in the Sacred Doctrine, one of the great verses. We then learned that the purpose of the Mahadeva aspect is not so much the unification of matter and spirit, that belongs to the law of attraction, but rather the unification of the 7 into 3 and the 3 into the 1. DK then takes us into the cosmic aspect of the law of synthesis, where that law controls all extra systemic manifestation. And he ends with the idea that the source of the cosmic point of synthesis for our solar system lies in the one about whom not may be said. And this takes us up to where we left off last time, in the middle of the section on the first aspect, which we will continue today. Can we get a reader for more info on the one about whom not may be said?
Yeah. Ann Parker, would you like to read?
You know it.
Okay.
A solar logos on his own plane holds an analogous place to that of a heavenly man in a solar system, and from a still higher standpoint to that of a man within the solar system. When the place of the solar planes within the cosmic scheme is duly apprehended, it will be recognized that on cosmic levels of a high order, the solar logos is an intelligence as relatively low in the order of cosmic consciousness as man is in relation to solar consciousness. He is but a cell in the body of the one about whom naught may be said. His work parallels on cosmic levels the work of man on the solar planes. He has to undergo on the 3 lower cosmic planes a process of developing an apprehension of his environment of the same nature as man in the 3 worlds.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of a mind-blowing quote to imagine that the solar logos is to the one about whom not may be said as a human being is to the solar logos. Literally a cell in the body of this being. Okay, so we'll start our reading. Next up, could we get a reader, please?
Mike, you want to read?
Yes, of course. Therefore, in connection with the first logos, we can sum up as we did with the other logoi. His goal is the synthesis of the spirits who are gaining consciousness through manifestation, and who, by means of experience in matter, are gaining in quality. His function is, by means of will, to hold them in manifestation for the desired period and later to abstract them and blend them again with their spiritual source. Hence, the necessity of remembering that fundamentally the first logos controls the cosmic entities or extra-systemic beings. The second logos controls the solar entities. The third logos controls the lunar entities and their correspondences elsewhere in the system.
Thank you. Okay. First, his goal is the synthesis of the spirits who are gaining consciousness through manifestation and who, by means of experience in matter, are gaining in quality. So, what is meant by a synthesis of spirits? Since the spirit aspect is in essence one. Okay, so after the dawning of monadic realization, which happens around the third initiation, after the Antakarana is built, comes a series of ever more inclusive realizations involving the merging of lesser groups into greater. This process, called identification, is only possible through experience in the form world, which adds what DK here calls quality, and later describes as gained faculty. Quality and gained faculty represent the goal of the first logos. Next, his function is, by means of will, to hold them in manifestation for the desired period, and later to abstract them and blend them again with their spiritual source. So the first aspect has a twofold function. First, to hold in place those who journey into the form world, then later to abstract them from this realm of experience. The period of holding, which includes the entire personality cycle, is enforced by the exoteric planetary rulers of the constellations, who are empowered by the clockwise motion around the wheel of life. It's really this clockwise direction of moving through the wheel that allows the first logos to hold the indwelling jivas at this level of experience, to hold them into the experience gaining stage, when after eons, equilibrium between spirit and matter is finally achieved, and that always has to be achieved by the indweller. That same force of will then acts to reverse the pilgrim's direction on the wheel, and this brings about the possibility of the drawing from the esoteric and hierarchical planetary rulers, which then progressively abstract the spirit aspect from the forms it inhabits. So those are the two stages, or the two functions, I should say, of the first aspect. Thoughts or questions? Anybody have any comments or questions at any time? It's always much more interesting to have some dialogue going than just to have me lecture at you. So finally, we have, hence the necessity of remembering that fundamentally the first logos controls the cosmic entities or extra systemic beings. The second logos controls the solar entities. The third logos controls the lunar entities and their correspondences elsewhere in the system, meaning not just on planet Earth, but all throughout the system. So if the first logos controls cosmic or extra systemic beings, it must itself be a being of the highest cosmic level, since its control extends through all the cosmos, rather than a systemic being rather than being just connected with the system, though we know from this chart that there is also a first logos that is an aspect of our solar logos, as shown in this detail here. It would then follow that the true or cosmic second logos controls not only the second aspect of our solar system, but the second aspect of all solar systems. And the cosmic third logos, the lunar matter aspect of all systems. Thus, possibly, this is an hypothesis, making the three logoi associated with our solar logos local representatives of these great cosmic logoi. Now, alternatively, it can be, he states outright that the first logos controls cosmic entities, but it could be that the second and third logos are aspects of each solar logos throughout the universe, and that there isn't an all-encompassing second or third logos. In MDR's notes, he tends to go with the idea that there is this amalgam entity, this unified entity that represents this quality of the second logos and the third logos that is universal. Okay. Any thoughts about this? Thoughts or questions? Okay, next up, can we get a reader, please? I saw a hand. Let's pick up some hands before we go on.
Yeah, Maria Christina.
Hi. I'm
Hi.
futzing with my computer. It's so good to be here. And I'm sorry I missed last time. But of what we just read, what really grabs me is the goal of the synthesis of the spirits by means of experience in matter are gaining in quality. That seems to refer specifically to our presence here and now.
Indeed.
You know, the
It's the
experience.
ultimate purpose. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's beautifully stated.
Yeah.
And it's stating redemption rather than just getting away from what we're doing and
Right.
and embracing this experience in matter, which is hard to take, but gaining in quality. That's all.
Yeah, for a reason that is probably a mystery of initiation, we have to come here. It doesn't work just to stay in monadic consciousness. I mean,
We volunteered.
Somehow we volunteered. We were sent forth. We left the Father's house, but this is a crucial, necessary step in the process of becoming. And the only thing that DK says about this is that the self-consciousness that's developed, which doesn't exist before in pure monadic consciousness, the consciousness of that growing consciousness of the separated individual is part of the purpose. And that's what then creates a greater sum total when you finally do return to the monad at the sixth initiation.
All together.
Thank you, Maria Christina. Anyone else? I see a hand from Roberto.
Hello. What do you
Hello.
think the synthesis of spirit with spirit means?
Yeah, well, I was just talking about that. I say more about it in a moment, but it suggests a limited recognition of the actual complete synthesis of all spirit. So it's not from the plane of spirit that this sense of uniting with other spirits occurs. It's from the stage of consciousness of the one who is unfolding towards that unity. And like I said, I'll say more about it. But HPB actually talked about it in the last SD webinar, where she says it's a ridiculous concept to talk about a monad that is other than another monad. That the Greeks had it right when they said, all monads, which they call monas with an as on the end, are one. It's a unified field of spirit awareness, but that vehicles are created for those monads to influence individual units that are on this journey of consciousness. And therefore, the coming together of these individual units increasingly into ever larger groups is what this statement refers to.
So kind of spirits who do not yet realize they are spirits are being synthesized.
They have a limited awareness of themselves as spirit, but even a limited awareness is a high state of being, because we're talking about the first aspect, the spirit aspect, which is not soul, but rather monad. We have a similar unfoldment as we come to realize soul, where we realize that there is no thy soul and my soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, a reader, please.
And Joe Garso.
I am here.
Good. Could you
Just
read?
read what's on the page, right?
Just
this
always in the middle. This is just to show us where we are in the book, and this shows us where we are in this section. So the middle is where we read.
Sorry, I missed before, and so I see we're starting a whole new section. That's cool.
Yeah, we just started. We're going to be in it for probably a year or so, maybe a couple.
Okay. Wow. This rule must not be carried too far in detail as long as man's mind is of its present caliber. The mystery lies in the realization that all is carried on in a divine cooperation that has its base outside the system. Hence, too, the fact that the first logos is called the destroyer, because he is abstraction, if viewed from below upwards. His work is the synthesis of spirit with spirit, their eventual abstraction from matter, and their unification with their cosmic source. Hence, also, he is the one who brings about pralaya, or the disintegration of form, the form from which the spirit has been abstracted.
Thank you, Joe. Okay. First, this rule must not be carried too far in detail as long as man's mind is of its present caliber. Well, I feel thoroughly put in my place. The mystery lies in the realization that all is carried on in a divine cooperation that has its base outside the system. So first of all, this seems to confirm our hypothesis, this last line, that though they have their systemic representatives, the three logoi are extra systemic, because it says, mystery lies in realization that all is carried on in divine cooperation that has its base outside the system. So that suggests that this threefold process is a cosmic one, not just within the system. Okay, and in terms of men's minds being at its present caliber, my guess is that refers to the fact that the overwhelming percentage of humanity is still building lower mind. You know, they're actually coming under the influence of Mercury as the exoteric ruler, and building their ability to think in a way that's free from emotional reaction, and that just a very few are able to tap into higher mind, and even fewer still consciously be aware of higher mind. And you know, it would take probably even levels higher than that to understand, actually have a real comprehension of what he's talking about here in terms of cosmic extension, in terms of the first logos, or the abstraction of spirit. To have any understanding of the spirit principle at all, DK says at one place you have to be a third initiate before you even have a brief glimpse of your monad, which is the representative of the spirit aspect. So that's probably why he makes that comment. And next up, hints to the fact that the first logos is called the destroyer, because he is abstraction if viewed from below upwards. This is an interesting comment, especially the last part. This is not the principle of active form destruction, but rather the falling away of form that occurs through the withdrawal of spirit. But when seen from below upwards, it appears to be destructive, because when you're form identified and the form falls away, it seems like a destruction of the form. From above below, it seems like the liberation of spirit from form. This is the third of three stages of creator, preserver, and destroyer. Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva in Indian parlance, that make up all cyclic manifestation. Next up, oh, I say hands. Okay. Yes, Maria Christina. Are you there? Maria Christina? Okay, Joe.
I am here, and that was an accident, but thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, I would like clarification on the first, second, and third logos. Is that all part of the first aspect of solar, or is that three different? I don't get it.
Okay, let's do a little review. We'll go back here and get a little graphic help. Actually, you know, this chart maybe is an even easier way to understand it. The third logos, who has this symbol here shown with a cross in it, is all about the evolutionary cycle that moves spirit into form, right? It's called the first life wave, evolution of matter. So it's all about just what it says. It's all about matter and the evolution of matter. So the first great task, and it's not an easy one, is to ground matter finally all the way down to the physical plane, and to build forms out of the substantive, from the substantive realm, right? And that's the longest period of all that takes in any given cycle, whether it's a globe or a chain or whatever. That's by far the longest period. And that is completely related to form building. For a human being, that's the creation of animal man, right? And that takes him to the threshold of the second aspect where the soul gets involved. And that aspect is sent forth by the second logos. And that brings the indweller, the struggling jiva, back up the evolutional scale to the bridge of the antakarana, right? The purpose of this logos, working with form, working with this logos, is to continuously recalibrate the form aspect so that it becomes a more fit vehicle for the indwelling spirit. That's what allows the animal man to become a human being, and finally, in this momentous building of the antakarana, to join the fifth kingdom, at which time the logos, which is pure spirit, which is, by the way, behind all three in terms of the purpose. It's this purpose of the first logos that all of this happen, right? But when one becomes a third initiate, you finally join the ranks of those who, quote unquote, know. And in that knowing, you become monadically aware. So that's one way of looking at it. There's many more ways of saying it. Simply put, the third logos has to do completely with the material aspect. It's connected with the mutable cross, right? All about form development. The second aspect, the second logos, has to do with the soul aspect. And it's created through the connection between the first and the third, the blend of the first and third. That's why it's called the sun, right? And that's all about the acquisition by the soul of the personality, that alliance that allows for the lifting of the personality to soul awareness, right? And this first logos, completely non-material, and it's the indwelling spark that animates the whole process. Hope that helps a little bit.
Well, I'd like to, I think I got something new this time. So this review was great. This seems to be where Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma are noted as representing the cosmic area above all below. Or is it only from the sun down in this particular graph?
Oh, you could look at this cosmically, but I think it would have to be adjusted for each solar system in terms of, the exact specifics. I mean, we just don't know because we haven't been given this kind of detail about another solar system. My guess is that something very similar to this map exists in other solar systems. However, you have to remember that this is a second ray solar system, and therefore the way it unfolds is going to be in accordance with that energy. So you might have the same qualities would exist, but you might have a different unfoldment in a first ray or third ray solar system.
So just to capitulate, I think what you told me now is that this graph applies to the solar system, the planetary system, and I probably used the wrong word, and the personal self.
Yeah, that's right. All of
Great.
those are applicable, I mean, physical body, astral body, mental body, causal body, those exist on all three levels, right?
Beautiful.
So,
Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. I have no idea where we are. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, we talked about the destroyer aspect. Yeah. So next up, hang on a second here. Yeah, here we go. His work is a synthesis of spirit with spirit. Robert asked about this. How can you have the synthesis of spirit with spirit when spirit is one thing, right? Their eventual abstraction from matter and their unification with their cosmic source. So that's the work of the first logos. Okay. The influence of the law of synthesis, to come back to this chart, begins to exert its force at the third initiation, as opposed to the law of attraction, which is working during this process where you're responding to the soul. Okay. At which time the indweller at the third initiation gets its first glimpse of the monad. Actually, as previously mentioned, spirit is already one, because that is O-N-E one, not it has already won, because it is inherently synthetic and thus cannot be divided. The use of the word spirits, the plural of the term, suggests that because, and here I'm giving my written answer to what I extemporaneously said to Robert, that because spirit is in constant interaction with the form aspect, conscious identification with the all has not and will not be achieved until the theosophical day be with us, or universal pralaya. Until that time, through the second and third phases of every cycle, governed by the laws of attraction and of synthesis, there is an ever expanding identification of the lesser with the greater, the merging of spirit with spirit, until finally at this, and that should be in quotes, because the merging of spirit with spirit, quote unquote, because it's already merged on its own level, but it's the conscious realization of that coming together. Until finally at the sixth initiation, the Chohan is faced with one of 7 paths, 6 of which lead out of the solar system altogether. And since the journey then becomes a cosmic one, the liberated jiva, now liberated from the cosmic physical plane, becomes entirely controlled by the first or spirit aspect. Yeah, Robert.
I understand why Joe was a little confused, because this chart, I'm looking at it in TCF, and it's at the top of it, it says logos of a solar system. Okay.
Yeah, well, okay.
And on the left column, it says lower cosmic or cosmic prakriti plane, which kind of implies, physical. But at the very top, you've got these logoi where the unmanifest spirit, these are cosmic logoi. And it seems like there would be a much greater gulf or distance between the cosmic logoi and just a solar logos. So, and this came out of the Theosophist magazine. So I don't know that, if they had the extent of knowledge that one, but DK put that in the book. So anyway, I think there is a kind of confusion there, a little bit, anyway, for me.
Yeah, well, that's why I was talking about, oh, darn it, sorry. Let me come out of this and go back. Let's see, where am I? I'm on slide 32. Okay, so if we go back to, or no, it wasn't. Yeah, here. If we go back to this slide, you'll see that these 3 logoi are also systemic. Mm-hmm. This is called the will aspect of the solar logos. And the 3 logoi that he's now describing are represented by these three aspects. I think I pull, yeah, here I include all three, right? But my hypothesis is that certainly we know that the first aspect, that the logos of will is cosmic. And therefore we could assume that this logos represented by this red circle here is a kind of local representative of that
Right.
cosmic logos. It's still up in the air as to whether the second and third are a unified consciousness beyond the solar system, or whether they manifest within each solar system, in their own particular ways. That's not indicated, but, like I said, MDR very much felt that there is a cosmic form that unifies this principle. To some extent, we could say that the cosmic Christ is representative of this second logos, though, they're not absolutely overlapping circles in terms of purpose. But yeah. Okay. So I believe we're at this new reading. Is that correct? I believe so. Can we get a reader, please? Sure, I'm in the right place.
Yeah, Kirsten, you want to read?
If we carry the analogy down to the microcosm, a glimpse can be gained of the same idea and hence ability to comprehend with greater facility. The ego, being to the man on the physical plane what the logos is to his system, is likewise the animating will, the destroyer of forms, the producer of pralaya, and the one who withdraws the inner spiritual man from out of his threefold body. He draws them to himself, the center of his little system. The ego is extracosmic as far as the human being on the physical plane is concerned, and in the realization of this fact may come elucidation of the true cosmic problem involving the logos and the spirits in prison, as the Christian puts it.
Thank you. Okay, first DK tells us that in the microcosm, the quote, ego being to the man on the physical plane what the logos is to his system, is likewise the animating will, the destroyer of forms, the producer of pralaya, and the one who withdraws the inner spiritual man from out of his threefold body. He draws them to himself, the center of his little system. In esoteric healing, DK says simply, death should be the recognition by the soul of work consummated and pralaya earned. What a shift of perspective. We earn our death by completing our work. DK gives more insight in a treatise on white magic. Can we get a reader, please?
Magda, you want to read?
Yes. The outstanding cycle for every soul is that of its forthgoing into incarnation and its return of or flowing back into the center from whence it came. According to the point of view will be the understanding of this ebb and flow. Souls might esoterically be regarded as those seeking the light of experience, and therefore turned towards physical expression, and those seeking the light of understanding, and therefore retreating from the realm of human undertaking to forge their way inward into the soul consciousness, and so became dwellers in the light eternal.
Thank you. Okay, DK includes this passage here in order to make the point that though the soul embodies a second principle, it takes on the role of the first ray destroyer at the end of each incarnation. It has its own Shiva aspect, just as the monad does at the end of one's long cycle of incarnations. Next, the ego is extra cosmic as far as the human being on the physical plane is concerned. And in the realization of this fact may come elucidation of the true cosmic problem involving the logos and the, quote, the spirits in prison, as the Christian puts it. So our little microcosmic systems are made up of the physical, astral, and lower mental planes. In relation to this threefold system, our ego, who express themselves on the higher mental planes, are relatively extra cosmic. This is a unique use of the word because, it's not literally cosmic, or it just means it's beyond the system that we employ in our daily life, which are the three lower worlds. So from that point of view, it's relatively extra cosmic. The disconnect in consciousness between soul and personality, as shown here, mirrors the higher disconnect that exists between the true logos and, quote, the spirits in prison, which include all sentient beings who inhabit forms made up of cosmic physical plane substance. So shown here. So we might hypothesize that the, quote, problem involving the logos and the spirits in prison has to do with the inability of those with cosmic physical plane vehicles, which is, everything in the solar system, to have any awareness of that which lies beyond the solar ring past naught. In the same way that personalities lack the ability to recognize the soul realm, shown here. Okay? This is a seventh initiation process when you break through into the cosmic astral plane and break out of this prison, this much higher form of prison of matter. Okay, next up, could we get a reader, please?
Maria Cristina.
C. His mode of action is a driving forward. The will that lies back of evolutionary development is his, and he it is who drives spirit onward through matter till it eventually emerges from matter, having achieved two things. First, added quality to quality, and therefore emerging plus the gained faculty that experience has engendered. Second, increase the vibration of matter itself by means of its own energy, so that matter at the moment of pralaya and obscuration will have two main characteristics: activity, the result of the law of economy, and a dual magnetism, which will be the result of the law of attraction.
Thank you, Maria Cristina. Okay. First up, his mode of action is a driving forward. The will that lies back of evolutionary development is his, and he it is who drives spirit onward through matter till it eventually emerges from matter. So direct motion invisibly animates spiralic motion, for it is direct motion that lifts rotary motion out of its static two-dimensional cycle. First-rate types are much quicker to recognize the influence of he who drives spirit onward through matter till it eventually emerges from matter. Any thoughts about this? Any questions? Okay. Next. It eventually emerges from matter, having achieved two things. First, added quality to quality, and therefore emerging, plus the gained faculty that experience has engendered. So through experience in the form world, the indweller draws to itself an ever-increasing aggregation of qualities, which make possible an ever heightened expression of spirit until the indwelling spark transcends the form world altogether. This is facilitated by the second aspect of divinity, which is constantly reformulating the form aspect to make it a more fit vehicle for the indwelling spirit so that it can continue on in this process of transcendence, I should say. Second, increased the vibration of matter itself by means of its own energy. We're talking about this first aspect, so that matter at the moment of pralaya and obscuration will have two main characteristics: activity, the result of the law of economy, and a dual magnetism, which will be the result of the law of attraction. So not only does the indweller add the qualities associated with the second aspect, but even the matter that makes up the forms he or she inhabits is driven into ever higher vibratory frequencies by the will aspect. Matter itself is transformed. DK says at one point that at the end of this solar systemic incarnation, matter itself will have within its what's the word? Purview, within its quality, will have included the quality of love wisdom, so that the matter of the next solar system will include that. Whereas this solar system matter, which is comes to us from the last solar system, is purely a function of the law of economy. And that result of the law of attraction, which is the building of ever finer forms, comes through the combination of the first and third aspects. He mentions the term dual magnetism. Hypothesis here, but I'm thinking that it refers to a condition where one is both magnetic, second aspect, and radiatory, which is the second quality of the third aspect, and thus both invocative and evocative. But it's if you have a more profound theory or just another theory, go for it. Yes, Robert.
I'll go with the another theory. Okay. The sort of plus minus of electricity. So in other words, magnetism has that kind of dual quality of attracting in two directions. One might almost think, again, that could involve both the attraction to the light and spirit and the attraction to matter.
Well, I like that last one. First of all, is in terms of just the positive negative aspect, there would be no reason to say dual magnetism to describe that, because it's inherent in magnetism, that it has a plus and minus pole. But this idea that it's doubly attractive, both drawing spirit and form, that's something that could be looked at, I think, a little more closely. That's a quality of the soul.
Mhm.
And let me see if I can get a take on that. Irish matter itself. Yeah.
Yeah, like the law
Yeah.
of attraction being kind of, it can be seen as a law of the cosmic astral. So on the cosmic astral, you would have, if it is an astrally related thing, that's the realm of the opposites.
Yeah, and since this is something that will come into the purview of the matter aspect, it's this idea that it would have that dual quality of drawing spirit down and yet be attracted to matter. There's something to that I like. Yeah. I see more hands. I'll turn it over to you, Mikhail. When it gets more than one hand, I turn it over to you.
All righty. Tom.
No, you're pretty light. Get closer or turn up.
Yeah, very low.
What about now?
A little better.
Still could be better.
Okay. Just came to me in my mind, if I really tried to, we talked about the three logoses, you could say that it's only one and it has three aspects, and the way the DK puts it here, mode of action and would be like already in all those aspects you have the other two aspects also. So could I read it like this, that mode of action as it's driving forward would be the first aspect of the first aspect, and added quality would be the second aspect of the first aspect, and then the matter aspect would be the third aspect of the first aspect.
Well, I would say activity for that third rather than matter to be the third aspect of the first aspect, because the first aspect doesn't directly involve itself in matter. It's only through its effect that matter is influenced. But yes, especially the second one, the idea of quality being the, like a 1.2, the second aspect of the first aspect kind of thing. I like that. Okay, Joe?
My thought has always been that the jiva increases its ability to attract energy from the soul and at the same time begins to radiate.
Correct. That's right. And he talks about this radiatory quality, which is definitely a magnetic second aspect form of radiation, not to be confused with pranic emanation, which is the third aspect. It gets complicated because prana is the second aspect of the third. Gosh, how do we do this? The second quality of the third aspect, the second attribute. That's a way of separating it. So prana is the second attribute of the third aspect. Magnetism is a second aspect quality. And yes, radiation, whether it be from a solar logos or a planet or a person, is magnetic. This type of radiation that results from connection with the soul aspect. And that intensifies as the soul aspect connection intensifies. Anyone else?
Well,
Yes.
I would just throw in two more qualifying words for that. And
Throw
one
away.
would be relationship, relating, and love.
Right. Both of those are, second aspect qualities par excellence. and they are also what draws us to that first understanding of unity, which is, there is no thy soul and my soul, right? There is just soul consciousness. Okay, let's see here. Second, increased the vibration of matter itself by means of its own energy. Oh, I have said this, didn't I? Yeah. Okay, so next up, can we get a reader, please?
Marianne, would you like to read?
Hello.
Hello.
All of these three concepts are governed by the law of synthesis, which is the law of the coherent will to be, persisting not only in time and space, but within a still vaster cycle. These preliminary statements have been laid down in an endeavor to show the synthesis of the whole. In the use of words comes limitation, and in the clouding of the idea, words literally veil or hide thoughts, detract from their clarity and confuse them by expression. The work of the second and third logoi, being the production of the objectivity of the essential spirit, is more easy to grasp in broad outline than the more esoteric work of the first logos, which is that of the animating will. In terms of fire, another angel of expression may perhaps elucidate. The third logos is fire in matter. He burns by friction and gains speed and added vibration by the rotation of the spheres, their interplay thus producing friction with each other.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So first up, all of these three concepts are governed by the law of synthesis, which is the law of a coherent will to be persisting not only in time and space, but within a still vaster cycle. Okay, so the three concepts cited are the goal, function, and mode of action of the first logos that we just read about. A coherent will to be requires optimal integration of the second and third aspects. That's what where the coherent part comes in order to serve the purpose of the first aspect. Coherent is here used as a similar meaning to the word integrated, through integration, coherency comes into being. The still vaster cycle refers to those cycles of becoming that take place. It just depends on where you are. For the solar logos, that would be beyond the cosmic physical plane altogether. For us, it would be coming into soul awareness. In relation to the first logos, however, it definitely would be a cosmic form. For instance, the 7 solar systems in which ours is one. Decay refers to this cycle in the first line of stanza 11. This is in the TCF stanzas. Quote, "The wheel of life turns within the wheel of outer form." But, this, if you take this more generally, we can even use this to describe the soul aspect, right? Here, it's meant to describe that pure first aspect, spirit, that animates all form, but we can look at it at soul levels and at monadic levels as well. Next up, these preliminary statements have been laid down in an endeavor to show the synthesis of the whole. In the use of words comes limitation and a clouding of the idea. Words literally veil or hide thoughts, detract from their clarity, and confuse them by expression. Throughout his works, DK laments the inadequacy of the quote-unquote use of words. There are a few reasons for this. I'm sure he has many more, but chief among them, the complete lack of vocabulary of nouns, verbs, and adjectives available to effectively portray the states of consciousness, the stature of higher beings, the vibratory quality of the higher planes, of the cosmic, even of the cosmic physical plane. This becomes an even more glaring inadequacy when trying to give an impression of the first aspect of deity. So what we get through DK's writings is a series of brilliant word symbols, which we can use to stimulate our intuition. But what we don't get, because of the inadequacy of language, is accurate descriptions, not from lack of intent or effort, but from the lack of available vocabulary. What DK has been able to do, and this is an act of pure genius, is to redefine and thereby shift the meaning of commonly used English words to a higher parallel meaning. Thus, the word love is shifted to mean an emanation and state of interrelated connection beyond emotion, though having its reflection in emotion. The word service lifted to mean the spontaneous effect of soul contact, which has its reflection in commonly recognized service activities. And in an effort to identify the nature of the first aspect, the word identification lifted by DK to mean a form of merged consciousness that has its reflection in the idea of resonant relatability, like I can really identify with where you're coming from, right? So phrases like a coherent will to be point to a state of awareness so completely beyond the scope of the usual meaning of the words used in the phrase that it prompted DK to lament the limitation of the tools he has at his disposal. Yes, Robert.
Yeah, I think this is amazing stuff that it's implied. Imagine that the idea is kind of like the soul, and words are like the bodies of manifestation of that soul. The personality or the bodies are not the soul and can never be. Just as the words can never be the idea. The idea is, a thing incorporeal on other levels, which, and that's why when he talks about telepathy, thought to thought, mind to mind, now you're closer, even though you're still at an outer layer, but you're closer.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, that the soul and the form aspect, or the form of the personality is like the idea in the word. I mean, the word idea is, a fantastic example of the incredible reinvention of the term, because for DK, and what DK teaches us is that a true idea is an atmic being, that even the highest intuitives of the race only touch the ideal, that it emanates from the idea. Well, that's a far cry from, hey, I got a good idea, let's go get an ice cream, not so much, right? So it's extraordinary. This is like something that goes on inside of all his teaching, how he's lifted our understanding to like the noumenal levels of what these words have as potential meaning. And yet once in a while, and he does it pretty often, you can see him throwing up his hands. It's, you can't get there from here, kind of a thing, through language. Yes, Joe.
It implies a kind of time where we may come face to face with our own ideas and finally understand, oh, that's what I was trying to create or express, or, you know,
Yeah.
interesting thought.
Yeah, and your other thought was really good too, which is this idea of, you know, in telepathy, what is the title? Telepathy and something, and etheric vision, I think. And
Etheric vehicle.
vehicle, that's it.
Etheric, yeah.
Telepathy and the etheric vehicle. He talks a lot about the nature of telepathy, and the only, you know, the really true telepathy is mind to mind, and that it transcends the need for the form of words, and there's a direct impression of the actual, some level of the idea. You know, probably the level that is available, you know, based on the quality of consciousness of the receiver, right? So if a master is able to be telepathically in touch with the disciple, you know, the reception of the idea put forth by the master would be circumscribed by his own consciousness, but way, way more than anything that could be gained, for instance, by a letter, you know, from the
As a
master.
writer, I'm always disappointed with the final result. Like I had, and you may feel that as a painter, you have an idea, you have a vision, and then you look at the end and say, oh gosh, I didn't quite get that.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm more a writer these days than painter, but yeah, absolutely. You know, you just, because the sense of what you want to communicate is like a presence inside you, you know, and when then you read what you've written, you know, even if you're pretty good at it, it's, you know, for me, it certainly doesn't come up to that original quality that is in me about what it is I want to say. But,
It
you
kind
know,
of exists, it exists in a state of wholeness, you know, in that moment of its birth that you can never capture in the expression.
yeah, yeah. Since you put it into, you know, you apply time and space to it, and it tends to dissipate.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe.
First of all, I was so impressed with, I think you were reading from your notes. They were absolutely gorgeous about what DK is doing for us in intimating what cannot be said in words. This is just beautiful. Secondly, Anna Sklar, who's on this call, posted this morning a piece that I think is well worth considering in light of this discussion today. And finally, my own thought is that there is a time in meditation where one no longer uses form or words, and one is left simply with the soul. And something happens. There is some imbuing that comes across. And I've just been reading that it actually gets into the mind or the brain, where one is able finally to say something about it in terms of form.
Right. Yeah, the purpose of meditation, you know, he tells us study, meditation, and service, right? And that what you were talking about is the connection between study and meditation. Meditation can take your study further. I mean, how many times does he say ponder on this? Well, enough that there is a whole book called Ponder on This. That's the extracts of all those, right? And there's various forms of that. And what he means is, you know, take these words into meditation and open your intuition in such a way that something greater of the meaning of the words can come to you. That's one form of meditation, certainly not the only form, you know, but yeah, and that's why it's essential, is an essential part of the threefold process. Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I like this playing with words and like they all are kind of forms. So first you have words, but behind the words you have thoughts, and then you have thoughts. Behind the thoughts you have ideas, and behind the ideas you have the I. So I don't know if my etymology is right, but I think idea as idea, and dia is a picture. So even idea is a picture from the great I who wants to picture itself to us. So also idea is a form in that way. What do you think?
Yeah, DK gives us this triplicity of idea, ideal, and idol. And the idol is equivalent to the form aspect. And the ideal is either at, you can look at it as being astral or its higher counterpart, Buddhic. And the idea is atmic or mental, depending on how, where you build this triplicity, right? So yeah, good thoughts. I see Tia's hand.
Yeah, I put a quote from DK that I remember running across in Treatise on White Magic that explored this whole concept of how the idea moves out into manifestation.
Seeing it, yeah.
Yeah, but also if you think about the Buddhic plane and the fact that it's a place of being and not consciousness, and if you're working with intuition, even that is limited by, your ashram or your rheological makeup as to what you can aspect out of that. So anytime you step out and anytime you come out of being itself, there's going to be limitations.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. Here, I'm going to see where are we at, 53. So we'll just keep it in its rough form here. Why don't you read that, Tia?
Every externalized idea is therefore possessed of form, animated by desire and created by the power of mind. The desire plane is the one upon which the mind imposes its conceptions in order to produce the idea incarnate, to clothe the idea in form. It is therefore the gestation ground. The mind previously has been the recipient of the archetypal idea as grasped and visualized by the soul. In its turn, the soul is the recipient of the formula as presented to it in the world of ideas. You have thus the presented idea, the perceived idea, and the formulated idea, and the idea working out into manifestation.
Excellent. That's really right down the alley of where we were talking. So you have this, you even have this archetypal idea, which is grasped and visualized by the soul. And that would be that Atmic plane, ultimately the Atmic plane idea. He doesn't talk of ideals in here. That's an intermediate stage that he discusses in other places. Thanks for that quote. That's a good one. Oops. Okay, let's see. Okay. So next, the work of the second and third logoi being the production of the objectivity of the essential spirit is more easy to grasp in broad outline than the more esoteric work of the first logos, which is that of the animating will. More easy to grasp in terms of consciousness because at least until the third initiation, our awareness is dominated by soul and personality, and thus by the second and third principles. More easy to grasp in terms of language because our entire vocabulary is oriented towards the second and third aspects, mostly the third. And finally, in terms of fire, another angle of expression, may perhaps elucidate. The third logos is fire in matter. He burns by friction and gains speed and added vibration by the rotation of the spheres, their interplay thus producing friction with each other. See, first of all, we note that the third logos is the fire in matter, not matter itself. This intelligent fire, also called fohat, conditions and refines matter through rotation of the spheres. Spheres being the essential form aspect of all indwelling jivas, whether an atom of substance, a human being, or a planet. This rotation creates an interplay between spheres, which increases their speed and raises their vibration. So even though the third aspect is characterized by rotary motion, the long-term effect of this motion is progressive. So matter itself does progress, even just through rotary motion. Okay, next up, can we get a reader, please?
Miri. I think I may have clicked mute just at this time you unmuted. There we go.
The second logos is solar fire. He is the fire of matter and the electric fire of spirit blended, producing in time and space that fire which we call solar. He's the quality of the flame, or the essential flame produced by this merging. A correspondence to this may be seen in the radiatory fire of matter, and in the emanation, for instance, from the central sun, from a planet, or from a human being, which later emanation we'll call magnetism. A man's emanation or characteristic vibration is the result of the blending of spirit and matter, and the relative adequacy of the matter or the form to the life within. The objective solar system, or the sun in manifestation, is the result of the blending of spirit, electric fire, with matter, fire by friction. And the emanations of the sun in time and space are dependent upon the quality, the adequacy of the matter and of the form to the life within.
Okay, so this, I'm sorry?
Just correcting, within, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So this whole paragraph is about the fire aspect of the three fires connected with the three logoi. First, the second logos is solar fire. He is the fire of matter and the electric fire of spirit blended, producing in time and space that fire which we call solar. So thus the two become three. One in the first aspect and the third aspect blended become the second. And so instead of the duality, you have the triplicity. We see in this statement why the second logos is called the sun, S-O-N. Spirit and matter, father and mother, represented by the elements fire and water, together form the fundamental duality. Their merging creates the second aspect, which is second in spiritual stature, but third to appear. We see this blending of first and third in spiralic motion, which is rotary and direct motion combined. Referencing the phrase producing in time and space, producing time and space, MDR asks the question, but what if we are outside time and space? Is that which is called solar still produced? So I thought about this for a while. One answer might be, since systemic consciousness is characterized by time and space, which are products of the cosmic physical plane, systemic solar consciousness would be superseded by one who has transcended time and space. But such a one would still be subject to cosmic solar consciousness, which has its center in the central spiritual sun. And therefore, solar fire would move from systemic solar fire to cosmic solar fire. From our perspective, that would be direct motion. That would be electric fire. But from the cosmic perspective, it would be cosmic solar fire. That's an hypothesis, but I think it might hold. I see a hand. Yes, Jerry. Either you're muted or something. Jerry?
Sorry. What is your view of the relationship of fire by friction and Kundalini?
Yeah, well, in this webinar series, we've talked a lot about that. The Kundalini is fundamentally the two aspects of fire by friction, which are latent fire, which is inherent to matter, which is drawn up the spine, and it merges eventually with radiatory fire or pranic fire. And you have these two triangles of fire that are gradually come into being, circulate, and eventually merge at a place between the shoulder blades. That form of fire then eventually attracts another triangle in the mind, which is between three centers in the head and their corresponding glands, which eventually forms a triangle. And when the now merged triangle of matter, which is made up of latent and radiatory fire, merge with the fire of mind, then up till that point, it's all third aspect, right? All, in a sense, rotary motion in its two aspects. But then it calls forth the fire of spirit, and which comes through the soul, and then this is a very high stage of Kundalini. But for the most part, it's a third aspect operation. Did you put your hand back up, Jerry? Yeah.
Could I follow up?
Of course.
So it seems that there are Kundalini processes going on in existence that are beyond human. How, I mean, Jeffrey Hodson writes about this actually, and so it seems Kundalini seems to be an energetic expression of the third aspect and beyond human. And I guess I'm just trying to understand at a more primordial level the relationship between Kundalini, independent of human expression. Is
Right.
there a relationship?
Yeah, it's planets also have a Kundalini, raising of the Kundalini. The Earth has been described as the base of the spine chakra of the solar logos, and that solar logos is in process of raising its Kundalini. The aspect, though definitely at a twice removed higher octave, is still third aspect from the point of view of the solar logos, right? It's not the it's the matter aspect of the solar logos that's being affected, not the matter aspect of a human being. That would start at the Buddhic plane rather than the dense physical plane. But still, there is a raising of the matter, of the latent and radiatory aspects of fire until they are then merge. Even at solar logoic levels, that would be true. So the process is universal, and then it's individually applicable, whether be to a man, a planet, or a solar logos. Does that help?
It is. So is it inaccurate to say that fire by friction and Kundalini are analogous or the same?
Okay, fire by friction is a bigger circle
Okay.
than the Kundalini, which is a specific process whereby fire by friction is utilized.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet. I love questions like that. I mean, yes, Robert.
Given what we've been reading, Michael's question about the inside outside is like a perfect representation of what DK is talking about, which is that words, they just veil. This is almost like a word paradox, because there is no inside or outside. It's all just relative to the position of the observer. So it's kind of fascinating. And I think in terms of what Jerry was talking about, Kundalini, as I understand it, is a merging of these different fires. There's layers, levels, stages of Kundalini having to do with the blending. The fire by friction would be part of that process journey.
It's all of that process, Robert.
Yeah.
Until the fourth initiation. Only then does a higher fire, solar fire, get drawn down into the process. But the raising up through the spine is all a function of rotary motion, a function of the two aspects of fire and the fire of mind.
Yeah, I definitely agree that we're talking about third and fourth, but yeah, okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Fascinating subject. Okay, next, he is the quality of the flame, or the essential flame produced by this merging. We're talking about the second logos here. Okay. Second logos is solar fire. So he is the quality of the flame. So like the third logos, the second logos is being described here in terms of fire, but instead of being called fire, is described as flame, suggesting that flame is noumenal to fire, is the noumenal source of fire. Furthermore, this flame seems to be a vehicle for the quality of the internal flame, which we might hypothesize is love wisdom, right? This quality aspect of flame at this level of the second logos is love wisdom. I saw Maria Christina. Do you have a comment? Or did you pull your hand back down?
Just having a hard time muting and unmuting. I'm still left over on that last conversation. So my question would be, so I followed the process completely because I have of the raising of, the latent fire and the merging, the pranic, and etc.
Yeah.
So would you say that Kundalini is the process then? Is that what you're saying? Is the process?
The raising of the Kundalini is the process. The Kundalini itself is also that the serpent that's coiled in the base of the spine center. It's
latent.
That's not latent fire. That's the. This is interesting. I never thought of this. What's the difference between the Kundalini? It's Kundalini fire. So yes, it is the latent fire that resides in the base of the spine, coiled as a serpent is, that then is drawn upwards and begins to interact with the fire of prana and eventually merge. So yeah, I think they're the same. You don't have, Kundalini is not a separate thing from the fire of Kundalini or the fire, latent and radiatory fire.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I hadn't thought about that before. But it's always described in terms of Kundalini fire, and it's symbolized by a serpent. Okay, anyone else? He is the quality of the flame or the essential flame produced by this merging. Okay, that's what we just looked at. Next. A correspondence to this may be seen in the radiatory fire of matter and in the emanation, for instance, from the central spiritual sun, from a planet, or from a human being, which latter emanation we call magnetism. The radiatory fire of matter, also called prana, is here cited because it is the second aspect of the fire of matter. The emanation from the central sun, a planet or human being, is, we're here being told, magnetic, which is a quality of the second aspect. This emanation is a result of a blend of the spirit and matter of the emanating form. Again, somebody is, there's some bleed through. Could you mute
that?
Mikhail? Could you
Blueberries
mute
with French
whoever's?
toast for you.
Okay, I will.
What?
Somebody's coming through. Could you mute them?
It's Jerry.
Okay. Could you
He's
mute them?
muted.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know why that popped on. Let me do that.
You know what? Anyway, let me see, where was I? Okay, so the upshot here is that emanation is created through a combination of the indwelling spirit and the outer form, right? And the blending of those to the second aspect. And that's why it's magnetic in nature, the emanation. But not to be confused with prana. I've done a bit of research on this. I'm still not completely clear on it, because DK says emphatically prana is not magnetic in nature in and of itself. It is a third aspect quality. And now it happens to be the second, what's the word I was using before? Second, I lost my name. The second quality of the third aspect, but nonetheless, it belongs to the third aspect. Yes, Robert. Second attribute. That's what it's the second attribute of the third aspect, but nonetheless, it's third aspect. But magnetism per se always involves the coming together of the first and third aspects, and it demonstrates as radiatory. Yeah, Robert.
This Kundalini discussion is really interesting because I think, once again, we're looking at the veiling through words. When DK talks about things like planetary Kundalini, Kundalini is a process that occurs on many different levels. So it's both a process and it's an energy as well. But it's not something we can understand. We can only understand it to whatever degree we can understand it on the level we are at. But it is a process of planetary Kundalini, solar Kundalini. These are phrases he used.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and one of the things I learned, and we have spent dozens of webinars on this subject of the Kundalini. If you're really interested, you can go back and pull up, probably starting 10 webinars ago, because we came in, I think it was on page 77, with division D, which is prana and the etheric body, right? So he quickly graduated after describing prana, he started talking about kundalini. So we went into it in depth, the process of raising, and it was quite an education for me, even though I read the book a couple of times. It's one of those things where you go, really, have I read this book? So yeah.
I think this is part of the sense of humor of being a master, that words, they just veil, they detract from real meaning, but keep reading. It's
Yeah, right.
It's really interesting process we're going through.
Yeah. And, it also points a bit to his sacrifice, It's like, being told to, that you're in a swimming competition, and then you realize that the substance you're swimming through is tar, when he was told that he needed to, write about these topics, it's pretty extraordinary. Anyway, okay. So next up, a man's emanations or characteristic vibration is the result of the blending of spirit and matter and the relative adequacy of the matter or the form to the life within. So we've learned that one of the influences of the second logos, which is what he's talking about here, works to constantly recondition the form aspect so that it may become a more fit vehicle for the expression of the indwelling jiva. Thus, the magnetic emanation from this constantly reconditioned form is also second aspect in nature. The quality and the intensity of this magnetic emanation, whether a solar logos, a planet, or a human being, increases along with one's level of consciousness. The greater the consciousness, the greater the radiation and the higher quality of that radiation, because the form aspect, the matter in the form aspect itself has been chosen to optimize the expression of the indwelling jiva. And finally, the objective solar system, or the sun in manifestation, is the result of the blending of spirit, electric fire, with matter, fire by friction. And the emanations of the sun in time and space are dependent upon the adequacy of the matter and the form to the life within. So, he's repeating himself somewhat here. Here, DK takes the subject of emanations of the sun, SON, to solar logoic levels, thereby illustrating that for humankind, planetary lives, and solar lives, the indwelling spirit and the form aspect combine in order to create a magnetic emanation, which DK calls the energy of sonship, and an energy which is qualified by and dependent on the adequacy or the evolutionary level of the matter that makes up the sheaths of the indweller. From the perspective of occult physics, this is caused by a combination of electric fire and fire by friction. Hope you're starting to get some understanding of what he's talking about here. This quality generated by the first and third logos in combination. Okay, next up, we get a reader, please.
Yeah, Nisa.
Okay, let's see if I can. I'm still I have moments when I think I might glean like something, but I think the more I read, the less I feel like I understand. Anyway,
Well, that's where you should substitute reading with rereading. You know, I've been over this material many times, and every time something further comes through. You know, and I really don't think he wrote it to be understood in one reading. It would take somebody at a very high level of mental development, in more than that, you know, of intuitive development. It really takes study, you know, rereading to get it. So, you know, don't beat yourself up about that for sure.
okay. The first logos is electric fire, the fire of pure spirit. Yet in manifestation, he is the Son, for by union with matter, the mother, the Son is produced by whom he is known. I and the Father are one, is the most occult statement in the Christian Bible, for it not only refers to the union of a man with his source, the monad, via the ego, but to the union of all life with its source, the will aspect, the first logos. We will now endeavor to confine ourselves strictly to the subject of fire and matter and its active effects upon the sheaths of which it is the animating factor, and upon the centers which come primarily under its control.
Thank you. Okay, so first up, the first logos is electric fire, the fire of pure spirit. Though DK repeatedly tells us that the nature of electric fire cannot be known or understood before the third initiation, he does give us this fascinating passage on the devas that embody electric fire. Could we get a reader, please? How about Scott? Scott, are you there?
Yeah, Scott.
Okay. Just a second here. The transmitters of the word on the atomic subplane of each plane are the devas of vast power and prerogative, who may be stated to be connected with the father aspect and embodiments of electric fire. They are all fully self-conscious, having passed through the human stage in early kalpas. They are also corporate parts of the 7 primary head centers in the body of a solar logos or planetary logos.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Oh, I didn't put the assignation on this. Right now I was looking for that, seeing just where I got this, but I forgot to put it in. Yeah, it's you can see this, you know, at least a chapter could be written about this paragraph. You know, it raises way more questions than it answers. But, you know, in reference to what we're talking about here, you know, he has almost no actual description of electric fire, but he does describe these great devas who pass through the human stage in much earlier kalpas. So with that inspirational note, I'll have to pull the plug, and we'll start here next week. So thanks very much.